It started on a gray, damp morning when the two cousins, Michael and Emily, arrived at their grandmother's old farmhouse in a remote corner of upstate New York. The town had the kind of silence that made your ears ache, broken only by the distant hum of cicadas and the occasional caw of a crow. The gravel driveway crunched under the tires as they parked their car beside the time-worn barn. Paint peeling, wood rotting at the edges. Emily got out first, stretching her arms with a yawn, looking at the farmhouse with a mixture of nostalgia and unease. "It hasn't changed a bit," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Michael followed, dragging their luggage behind him, and for a moment, neither spoke, listening to the wind whistle through the hollow spaces of the surrounding forest. The house smelled of damp wood and something else, something metallic, almost like rusted iron mixed with wet soil. The door creaked ominously as they entered, revealing a dimly lit hallway with framed black and white photos of stern-looking ancestors staring down at them. Each step on the old wooden floorboards echoed like a warning. Emily joked lightly about how the house seemed haunted, but Michael couldn't shake the feeling that the walls themselves were watching Dot as they unpacked. Emily noticed a peculiar draft near the staircase. The air seemed colder there, almost unnaturally so, and a faint scratching sound came from above. "Probably just the wind," Michael said, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. They decided to explore the surrounding property, thinking it might lift the tension. Outside, the fields were overgrown, the fences collapsing in places, the woods close enough to seem like they were breathing. Birds flew low, disturbed by something invisible. Emily felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise, whispering that they were not alone. But when she looked at Michael, he was scanning the horizon, pretending to be brave. Dot. As the afternoon wore on, they found themselves drawn to the barn. The door was partially ajar, moving slightly with the wind, and inside was a maze of cobweb-covered tools and forgotten crates. Among them, a small, dusty trunk caught Emily's attention. She knelt and brushed off the grime, opening it with a cautious click. Inside were old diaries, bound in leather, yellowed with age. The first entry she read aloud made Michael freeze. August 12, 1923. The house listens. The house remembers everything we hide. A shiver ran down Michael's spine. The diary seemed ordinary at first, but as Emily continued reading, the words became darker, describing strange occurrences in the house, whispers in the night, objects moving on their own, shadows that didn't match the light. By the time she finished the first page, a low moan had started somewhere deep within the barn. It wasn't the wind. Michael grabbed her arm, urging her to leave, but curiosity rooted her to the spot. The moan grew louder, turning into a guttural, almost human cry that made them both step back in fear. Outside, the sky darkened unnaturally fast, the clouds swirling as if stirred by something unseen. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, and the old farmhouse groaned under the weight of the storm. They ran back to the house, but the moment they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them, and the lights flickered violently. The air felt thick, pressing against their chests. Michael tried the switches. Nothing worked. Emily heard whispering, faint at first, growing louder, coming from the walls themselves, chanting something indecipherable. They made their way to the kitchen, hoping to find some refuge. The room was as they remembered it, except for the old wooden cupboard that now appeared swollen, almost pulsating as if breathing. Michael approached it cautiously, but before he could open it, the cupboard door burst open violently on its own. Inside, instead of shelves or dishes, there was a narrow passage leading into darkness. A foul, coppery smell wafted out, and Emily gagged. "We shouldn't go in there," she whispered. But Michael, driven by a mix of fear and fascination, stepped closer. A sudden slam of the front door made both of them jump. The house seemed alive, reacting to their presence. Footsteps echoed above, slow and deliberate, though no one was there. Emily grabbed Michael's arm again, pulling him toward the staircase to check the upper floor, thinking maybe the source of the noise was there. As they climbed, the wooden steps groaned under their weight, and the temperature dropped sharply. Their breath became visible in the cold, and a faint blue light flickered at the end of the hallway. The light emanated from the attic door, slightly ajar. A sense of dread filled the air, thick and suffocating, as if warning them to turn back. Michael reached for the knob, but Emily's hand shot out to stop him. Before she could speak, the door creaked open wider on its own, revealing the attic filled with old furniture covered in yellowed sheets. But what drew their attention was a rocking chair in the corner, slowly moving back and forth, even though no one was near it. The sound of nails scratching against wood came from inside the chair, synchronized with the rocking motion. Suddenly, the room went completely silent. The storm outside stopped as if the world itself was holding its breath. Michael and Emily froze, realizing that even their own heartbeats sounded deafening. Then came the whispers again, close now, right in their ears, though no one was visible. The voices spoke in a language they couldn't understand, but the tone was unmistakably hostile. The air grew heavier, making it hard to breathe, and shadows in the corners seemed to stretch and pulse toward them. Emily grabbed Michael, urging him to leave, but as they turned, the attic door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Emily's flashlight, which she had been holding shakily, flickered and went out, leaving them in total darkness. Michael felt something brush against his shoulder, cold and wet, like a hand that didn't belong to a living person. Panic surged and he swung around, but there was nothing. The rocking chair continued to move, and a low, guttural laugh echoed from somewhere deep within the shadows. Emily clutched Michael's arm, her nails digging into his skin, and whispered through trembling lips, "We have to get out! We have to get out now!" As they fumbled toward the attic stairs, the floor beneath them creaked ominously, like warning bones under pressure. Every step was a struggle. It was as if the house itself was resisting their escape. Reaching the top, Michael tried the door, but it was stuck fast, the wood swollen with dampness. Behind them, the whispers grew into shouts, urgent and demanding, the language still unknown but filled with unmistakable malice. The walls began to ooze a dark, viscous substance, glistening like wet tar, and a suffocating stench filled the attic. Desperate, Emily kicked at a small window at the far end of the attic. Glass shattered, rain poured in, and the cold struck them like knives. Lightning illuminated the room in a blinding flash, and for the briefest moment, they saw figures standing just beyond the shards of glass doll, faceless shapes that moved unnaturally, their limbs bending in impossible angles. Before they could react, the next flash of lightning made the figures vanish, leaving only the oppressive darkness and the sound of their own panicked breathing. Time became distorted as they scrambled down the attic stairs. the whispers now a constant, maddening roar. The house seemed endless, hallways stretching farther than possible, doors appearing and disappearing. Every familiar room was warped, almost unrecognizable, filled with grotesque shadows and strange, flickering lights. Objects moved when they weren't looking, chairs sliding across the floor, paintings tilting to follow their movement. Michael and Emily clung to each other, the fear rooting them to each other as if separating would mean immediate doom. At some point, they realized they were no longer sure which way led to the exit. The hallway outside the kitchen stretched endlessly, doors lining both sides that led to darkness, some slightly open, revealing glimpses of distorted figures inside. One door had a small child, pale and expressionless, staring silently at them from a rocking chair that seemed to float slightly above the floor. When they blinked, it was gone, and only the empty room remained, smelling faintly of decay. Emily whispered that the diaries might have clues, something about the house's history, maybe a way to appease whatever entity was tormenting them. They retraced their steps to the barn, hoping to find the trunk, only to discover that the barn itself had changed. The structure seemed taller, the roof higher, the interior darker and more twisted, like they had stepped into another version of the building. The trunk was gone, replaced by an altar-like structure of old bones, rusted tools and matted hair, ranged in a ritualistic pattern. Michael and Emily felt nausea and vertigo as they backed away. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted slightly, and the barn seemed to groan in a low, resonant voice. The shadows inside moved with independent intent, stretching toward them, eager to consume. The storm outside returned violently, wind and rain battering the structure as if urging them to leave. But the exit was no longer visible, replaced by endless darkness. They ran blindly, each hallway and room twisting, expanding and collapsing around them. Michael felt something brush his arm again, this time with the unmistakable texture of human skin, cold and clammy. Emily screamed as the shadows began to coalesce into forms, faces twisted in agony, mouths open in silent screams, eyes glowing faintly red. The house was alive, and it wanted them trapped inside forever. Michael and Emily stumbled through the endless corridors, their lungs burning from the cold, damp air that seemed to cling to their skin like a living thing. Every step echoed unnaturally, sometimes too loud, sometimes swallowed entirely by the oppressive darkness. The walls themselves seemed to shift subtly, as if breathing, contracting and expanding around them, guiding or perhaps manipulating their path. Shadows twisted at the corners of their vision, stretching into impossible shapes only to vanish when they tried to focus on them. Emily's hands were slick with sweat and rain, and she gripped Michael's arm tightly. "This doesn't make any sense. It's not the house anymore. It's alive," she whispered, her voice trembling. Michael nodded, too exhausted and terrified to respond verbally. Every instinct screamed at him that they were being watched, hunted. The whispers from the previous night had returned, layered now in dozens of overlapping voices, some urgent, some mocking, some screaming in despair. The language was unintelligible, but the emotion was clear. They were not welcome, and the house would not let them leave. At one point, they reached a room that looked like a parlor, furniture stacked unnaturally, warped in strange angles. The wallpaper peeled in grotesque patterns, revealing what seemed like faint, almost imperceptible faces staring out at them. A piano sat in the corner, and though no one touched it, a single, sour note rang out, echoing violently through the room. Michael froze. Don't play with it," he said. But Emily didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on a small door at the far end of the parlor, a door that hadn't been there before. Compelled by some mixture of fear and curiosity, they approached the door. The handle was cold to the touch, ice seeping into their palms as they turned it. The door opened into a narrow hallway lined with mirrors on both sides. Their reflections stared back at them, but not quite correctly. Michael noticed his reflection's smile lingered a fraction too long after he stopped smiling, and Emily saw her own eyes glowing faintly red in the reflection. Even though her real eyes were wide with terror, the mirrors seemed endless, stretching infinitely, the reflections moving independently of their actual movements. Emily tried to turn away, but the mirrors pulled her gaze back, and in one of them, she saw a figure standing behind Michael. Before she could scream, Michael turned sharply, but there was nothing there. The whispers grew louder, closer, pressing against their ears like icy fingers. Panic set in fully, and they ran, crashing through the hallway, their own reflections multiplying and distorting with every step. Suddenly, the hallway ended abruptly, and they were in a room that resembled a child's bedroom. Toys lay scattered across the floor, but every single one was broken, warped, and smeared with a dark substance that looked suspiciously like dried blood. A mobile hung from the ceiling, spinning slowly, though no breeze stirred the air. The whispers became voices, coherent now, pleading and screaming. "You shouldn't be here. Leave or stay forever." Emily grabbed Michael's hand, dragging him across the room. In the corner, a small wooden chest trembled as if something inside was alive. Emily's curiosity bowled her terror, but before she could stop herself, she opened it. Inside were photographs, yellowed and torn. Each photo depicted the same house, but in every picture, there were shadowy figures standing in the windows, identical to the shadows they had seen themselves. The last photograph made Emily gasp. It was of the parlor they had just left, and standing in the doorway was a figure that looked exactly like Michael, frozen in a scream. The room went dark instantly, plunging them into a void where the only sound was their own ragged breathing. Something brushed past Emily's face, a cold, wet sensation, like the touch of dead skin. She screamed, and Michael grabbed her, spinning toward where he thought the door was. The door wasn't there anymore. Instead, a wall of darkness stretched infinitely in both directions. The whispers were now deafening, circling them, overlapping, screaming their names, mocking them, threatening them. Michael felt a surge of desperation and adrenaline. "We have to climb somewhere," he shouted, though where they could climb in this room with no ceiling wasn't clear. A faint outline of stairs appeared in the darkness, leading upward, twisting and turning in impossible angles. They ran toward it, stepping onto the first step, and immediately the floor beneath them gave way, plunging them downward into another corridor. This corridor was lined with doors, hundreds of them, each slightly ajar, showing fleeting glimpses of rooms filled with impossible horrors, walls bleeding, furniture bending unnaturally, figures crawling across the ceiling, whispering secrets that made no sense but filled them with dread. One door showed a family sitting at a dinner table, But when Emily looked closely, the figures had hollow, black eyes, and their mouths opened impossibly wide in a silent scream. She recoiled, but Michael pulled her along, afraid that lingering would attract attention. The corridor seemed endless. Every door they passed led to new horrors, each more grotesque than the last. Some rooms seemed to exist outside time itself, with clocks spinning uncontrollably, windows showing scenes of distant lands or moments from the past that didn't belong to them. At one point, they saw the farmhouse from the outside through a door, but it was decayed, twisted, as though the house itself had been corrupted and replaced by a monstrous version of itself. Emily stumbled over something soft and cold. Looking down, she saw a pile of clothes, but the clothes were soaked in a dark, congealed liquid, and beneath them, faint movements suggested they were not just clothes, but the remnants of human forms. She screamed again, but the sound seemed swallowed by the corridor, leaving them alone with the whispering voices, which had become frantic, almost enraged. Michael tried to keep them moving, but he too was exhausted, terror clawing at his mind. Every time he glanced at Emily, he felt an indescribable sense of wrongness. Her expression would flicker, just for a moment, into something alien, her eyes reflecting the red glow of the shadows that seemed to haunt them. The house was feeding on their fear, molding itself around them, warping reality. Hours seemed to pass, or perhaps minutes. Time had no meaning here. They reached a central chamber, a grand room with a high-vaulted ceiling, and in the center, a single, massive mirror reflected not the room, but the two of them, older, gaunt, hollow-eyed, trapped eternally. The mirror seemed to pulse, beckoning them closer, whispering promises of release if they would only step forward. Emily felt herself drawn, powerless, as if invisible hands were tugging at her very soul. Michael yanked her back violently. "No, we don't know what that is." Suddenly, the mirror cracked from the center, and a shriek so powerful it seemed to fracture the air filled the chamber. Shadows erupted from the fractured glass, swirling around them like a storm, whispering and screaming all at once. The floor trembled, and Michael felt the ground beneath him begin to dissolve, turning into a dark void. Emily screamed, clinging to him as they fell, or perhaps were dragged into nothingness. The world of light and reality vanishing completely when they landed. It was in a room that looked identical to the farmhouse's living room, but something was profoundly wrong. The walls pulsed faintly, breathing. The furniture shifted slightly when they weren't looking. A clock ticked backward, each second dragging painfully, and in the shadows at the edge of their vision, the figures watched, always watching, waiting for the moment their fear would allow them to act. Emily whispered, We can't leave. Not like this." And Michael nodded, understanding that whatever this place was, whatever had claimed the house, it was patient, and it would not let them go without exacting its price. Michael and Emily stood frozen in the living room that was both familiar and impossibly wrong. The air smelled of damp earth and decayed wood, thick with a metallic tang that made their stomachs churn. The shadows in the corners seemed to twist and shift when they blinked, like liquid smoke, reaching for them in silent hunger. Every instinct screamed to run, but every direction looked the same: hallways that looped impossibly, doors that opened into identical rooms, stairs that led to ceilings or dropped into black voids. Emily's hands shook as she reached for Michael. "I feel like Like the house is alive, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the low hum that now filled the room. Michael nodded, gripping her hand tightly. It's feeding on us, on our fear. That's why it's changing, why nothing looks right. He tried to steady his breathing, knowing that panic would only accelerate whatever was hunting them. They moved cautiously toward the staircase, hoping to find an exit. Each step creaked under their weight, but the sound didn't echo normally. It lingered, warped, distorted, like the house was mocking them. As they climbed, they noticed the walls beginning to bleed. A thin, dark liquid seeping from cracks, pooling on the steps. The smell of iron and rot became overpowering. Emily gagged, wiping her mouth with the back of her sleeve. At the top of the stairs was a long hallway lined with doors, each slightly ajar. From one came the faint sound of a child crying, though the tone was not one of sadness but of warning. Michael hesitated. "We shouldn't," he began, but Emily's curiosity, combined with desperation, propelled them toward the source. The door opened into a nursery, dimly lit by a pale, flickering light. Toys lay strewn about, but they were warped, twisted. A mobile spun overhead, casting strange shadows on the walls that didn't match the objects creating them. In the center of the room stood a crib. Inside was a small figure, face hidden, rocking back and forth unnaturally. Emily's pulse quickened. She stepped closer, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. As she leaned in, the figure lifted its head, revealing a pale, featureless face that seemed to swallow light. It let out a sound that was neither human nor animal, a high-pitched wail that pierced their ears and reverberated in their skulls. Michael grabbed Emily's arm, yanking her back. "We can't stay here," he shouted. They fled down the hallway, doors slamming behind them of their own accord. The whispers returned, louder and more chaotic than before, layering over one another in a maddening cacophony. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with each beat of their racing hearts. Shadows stretched from the corners, reaching with elongated, claw-like fingers, only to vanish when they tried to focus. Emily stumbled over something on the floor, a journal, old and tattered. Michael picked it up, flipping through pages written in a cramped, frantic hand. The entries were disturbing, detailing years of torment inflicted by the house. It watches, it waits, the walls remember. You cannot escape what lives here. They will come for you, as they have come for me. Emily shivered. We're not the first, she said, her voice trembling. People have vanished here before. The hallway seemed to stretch farther, twisting in impossible ways. Doors that should have been behind them appeared ahead. Rooms they had passed through before now showing grotesque new horrors. A figure appeared briefly at the end of the hall, a woman, pale, eyes black as void, hair matted and wet. She raised a hand, pointing directly at them, then vanished. The whispers turned into screams, angry, hateful, urging them to run. But suddenly, the floor beneath them shuddered. A crack snaked across the boards, widening rapidly. Emily screamed as she fell slightly, catching herself on Michael. The crack extended to the walls, and from it emerged a mass of shadows, twisting together into humanoid forms with elongated limbs and mouths that opened impossibly wide. They reached for the cousins, who scrambled backward, barely maintaining their balance. Michael grabbed Emily's hand. "This way," he shouted, yanking her toward a door at the far end. The door led to a dim hallway that appeared untouched by the horrors around them. Though the air remained cold and heavy, they ran, adrenaline pumping, their footsteps echoing unnaturally, as if the house itself was counting each step. At the end of the hallway was a large window. Rain lashed against the glass, lightning illuminating the distorted landscape outside. They tried to open it, but the frame was fused to the wall, unyielding. The whispers surged again, almost deafening now, overlapping with the sound of the storm. Emily pressed her hands against the glass, trying to see through the rain, and saw something move in the yard. Figures, hunched and slow, crawling toward the house from the surrounding forest. Michael pulled her back. "We have to find another way," he shouted. The hallway behind them now stretched impossibly long, doors appearing and disappearing at random. Shadows moved independently of light, creeping along walls, floors, and ceilings. Every time they turned, figures appeared in the distance, vanishing when approached, only to reappear closer, mocking their frantic movements. They entered a small room, once a study, lined with shelves of books. The titles were unreadable, warped in strange, shifting fonts. In the center of the room was a desk, upon which lay another diary, similar to the one they had found in the barn. Emily picked it up, trembling. The pages detailed a family that had once lived there, driven mad by the house's influence, eventually disappearing without a trace. The last entry was written hastily, in a hand almost unrecognizable. "They watch. They wait. You will not leave. The house knows your fear. It grows with it. If you read this, it is too late." As she read the words aloud, a sudden wind blew through the room, extinguishing the flickering candle on the desk. Shadows leapt from the corners, moving with purpose now, converging toward them. The walls shook violently, and the air became nearly impossible to breathe. Michael grabbed Emily, pulling her toward a door they hadn't noticed before, barely managing to open it before the shadows reached them. The door opened into another hallway, but this one was different. The walls were lined with mirrors, reflecting not their images, but scenes of torment. People screaming, rooms on fire, faces pressed against glass, begging for help. Among the images, they saw themselves trapped, terrified, forever wandering the corridors of the house. Emily screamed, turning away, but the reflections followed, mimicking their movements, twisting and distorting them into grotesque shapes. Suddenly, the mirrors began to crack, thin lines spreading rapidly. From the cracks, the whispers intensified, now accompanied by guttural moans and low, inhuman laughter. The floor beneath them trembled violently, and they both fell to their knees as the air thickened, pressing against them with unbearable weight. Emily's hand slipped from Michael's, and for a brief, heart-stopping moment, he thought she was gone. But she grabbed his arm just in time. We have to keep moving. Together," she gasped. Michael nodded, fear and determination battling within him. They rose, crawling and stumbling toward the end of the hallway, the mirrors shattering entirely behind them, releasing a wave of shadows that lashed out, but miraculously missed. At the end of the hallway, they found a staircase descending into darkness. The steps creaked under their weight, echoing through the house like a death knell. Lightning from outside briefly illuminated the staircase, and for a moment, Michael and Emily thought they saw the house stretching endlessly beneath them, the stairway leading into an abyss. With no other choice, They began to descend, the oppressive darkness pressing in on all sides. Whispers, moans, and laughter filled the air, mixing with the sound of the storm above. Every step seemed heavier than the last, as if gravity itself had changed. And somewhere deep below, they could feel the presence of something ancient and patient, waiting for them to falter, to give in to fear. The staircase seemed endless, each step stretching into the darkness like a tunnel leading into the house's very soul. Michael and Emily's hands were slick with sweat and rainwater that had followed them from the distorted hallway above. Every time their feet touched a step, the wood groaned under their weight, not the ordinary creak of old boards, but a deep, resonant groan that sounded alive, almost sentient. The walls beside them pulsated faintly, breathing, as though the house itself was aware of their every movement, tracking every hesitation, every frightened glance. Emily whispered, It's trying to trap us. I can feel it. Michael, every step we take, it's like it's closing in. Her words were swallowed by a low, vibrating hum that seemed to come from the very foundations. Michael gritted his teeth and nodded, trying to calm the rising panic in his chest. He knew that fear was a predator here, and the house thrived on it. Just keep moving, he murmured. We'll find a way out. As they descended, shadows began to gather along the walls, thin at first, barely visible, then thickening, moving with deliberate intent. The forms were humanoid, but grotesque, limbs bending at impossible angles, heads tilting unnaturally, and their faces, faceless or grinning with hollow, jagged mouths. Emily screamed as one of the figures brushed past her shoulder, cold and clammy like a corpse. Michael grabbed her hand, pulling her forward despite the terror that gripped them both. The air grew colder with every step. Their breath became visible, and a strange, metallic scent filled their nostrils. Lightning flashed through cracks in the stairwell above, illuminating the shadows in jagged bursts. In those brief flashes, Michael caught sight of shapes moving far below, tall, twisted forms that seemed to stretch into the darkness like fingers reaching for them. He stumbled, nearly falling, and Emily caught him just in time. This isn't normal, Emily gasped. It's like the house is alive, and it wants us to be afraid. It feeds on it. Michael didn't respond, too focused on the stairs ahead. Every instinct screamed to run, yet there was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Even the air seemed to resist their movement, pressing against them like water in a deep current, slowing them, forcing them to struggle. They finally reached the bottom of the stairs, or what they thought was the bottom. The room stretched endlessly, a vast hall lined with doors of varying sizes. Some doors were cracked open, revealing only darkness. Others emitted faint whispers, calling their names in voices that sounded both familiar and distorted. Emily's eyes darted nervously from one door to another. We can't open them. Whatever's in there, it's waiting. Michael ignored her warning, moving toward a door at the far end that seemed slightly less oppressive than the others. As he touched the handle, the room shifted subtly. The floor rippled like liquid beneath his feet, the ceiling stretching upward, and the walls breathing in slow, deliberate rhythm. A low growl emanated from every corner at once, surrounding them, resonating in their bones. Emily clutched his arm, tears streaming down her face. No, don't open it. Don't. Ignoring her, Michael pushed the door open. Inside was a long corridor, dimly lit by an unnatural, flickering light. The air smelled faintly of decay and old paper. As they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them with such force that the sound reverberated through the house. Like a gunshot, the corridor stretched farther than it should have, twisting and turning impossibly. Shadows moved along the walls independently of light, stretching toward them, vanishing when they turned their heads. Emily tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. The walls began to pulse, slowly at first, then faster, as though the house itself had a heartbeat. With each pulse, faint whispers filled the air, unintelligible, but urgent, almost demanding attention. Michael noticed writing on the wall scratched into the plaster, almost too faint to see. As he approached, the letters seemed to riff and shift, forming phrases that made his skin crawl. "You cannot leave. We remember everything. Fear feeds the house." A chill ran down Emily's spine. "It knows us. It knows our fear," she whispered, voice trembling. She wanted to run, but every instinct told her the corridor would only stretch farther, twisting reality to trap them. As they pressed on, the corridor opened into a vast, dimly lit room. In the center was a large, ornate mirror, its surface rippling slightly as if liquid. The reflection showed them, but wrong. Their eyes glowed faintly red, faces gaunt and hollow, expressions frozen in terror. Emily tried to look away, but an invisible force held her gaze. Michael reached out, touching the surface, and the mirror rippled under his fingers, cold and wet like real water. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the reflection, tall, faceless, its movements jerky and unnatural. It raised a hand toward them, though they were not in the mirror, and a low, guttural sound filled the room. The shadows surrounding them began to move, converging, whispering in unison, calling their names over and over. Michael and Emily stumbled back, tripping over one another as the floor beneath them began to writhe like a living thing, pushing them toward the mirror. Emily screamed, pulling Michael away, but the shadows surged forward, intangible yet oppressive. Their hearts pounded, breaths ragged, as the room seemed to collapse inward, walls bending, ceiling lowering, lights flickering violently. The mirror pulsed with a faint red glow, and for the first time, they understood. The house was not just a building, it was a predator. It had been waiting for them, studying them, shaping reality to trap them forever. With a surge of desperation, Michael grabbed Emily's hand and ran, slamming into the floor wall. To their shock, the wall shifted, sliding aside to reveal a narrow, spiraling staircase descending into complete darkness. No sound came from below, only the faint hum of the house itself, a living pulse that vibrated through their bones. Emily hesitated, looking back at the mirror. In its surface, countless faces watched them, previous victims, twisted and hollow-eyed, screaming silently. "We have to go," Michael urged, dragging her toward the staircase. Emily swallowed hard, nodding despite the terror clawing at her chest. They began to descend, each step taking them deeper into the unknown. Shadows clung to the walls, and the whispers grew louder, overlapping into a chaotic roar. Yet, despite the fear, a strange determination surged within them. They would not give the house the satisfaction of consuming them easily. At the bottom, the staircase opened into a cavernous chamber. The ceiling was impossibly high, stretching into darkness. walls lined with more mirrors reflecting endless corridors and rooms, each filled with horrors beyond imagination. A low, constant vibration filled the chamber, as if the house's heart beat here. At the very center, figures moved just beyond the edges of vision, always watching, always waiting. Emily clutched Michael's arm. "This is it. This is the heart of the house," she whispered, voice shaking. Michael nodded grimly, stepping forward. "Then we face it. We survive, or we don't leave at all." The chamber seemed to shift in response, walls breathing, mirrors pulsing, shadows gathering like a storm. As they moved deeper into the heart of the house, the whispers became voices, coherent now, chanting a single phrase over and over. The chamber seemed endless, stretching in all directions. The floor beneath Michael and Emily shifting ever so slightly with each step, like it was alive and breathing. Shadows pulled in the corners, thick and viscous, moving independently of any light source. The mirrors lining the walls reflected not their actual forms, but distorted versions, elongated limbs, hollow eyes, and mouths that twisted in silent screams. Each reflection appeared to mock them, showing futures where they were trapped, alone, screaming, consumed by fear. Emily's voice was barely audible over the low hum vibrating through the chamber. I can't. Michael. It's everywhere. It knows us. Everything we think. Everything we fear. She shivered violently, pressing herself against him. Michael's jaw was tight, his mind racing for logic in a place where logic had no meaning. "Then we move carefully, step by step. Don't panic. We survive by staying together." The whispers returned, louder now, layered in dozens of voices overlapping, chanting unintelligibly yet menacingly. "Forever. Stay forever. Stay." Each repetition vibrated through their bones, making it difficult to move, as if the house itself was resisting their every effort to advance. Every breath felt like inhaling thick fog, and the air pressed against their lungs like a physical force. As they advanced, the floor beneath them began to ripple, as if liquid, and the walls subtly bent inward, narrowing the passage. Shadows shifted along the walls, forming grotesque humanoid shapes. One reached toward Emily, an impossibly long arm ending in claw-like fingers. She stumbled back, but the figure recoiled as if sensing her fear, then advanced again, faster, more determined. Michael grabbed her hand and yanked her forward, forcing them to run. The floor beneath their feet groaned, and the entire chamber seemed to pulse with a slow, deliberate rhythm, the heartbeat of the house itself. Lightning flashed somewhere, illuminating shapes in the distance. Previous victims, pale, hollow-eyed, frozen in eternal terror. They reached out, fingers curling, mouths opening in silent screams. Yet they remained trapped behind invisible barriers. Tethered to the house top, the far end of the chamber revealed a massive doorway, carved from blackened wood, twisted with patterns that seemed alive, writhing like serpents in the dim light. Above it, faint red glyphs pulsed, glowing with a sinister rhythm that matched the whispers. Michael's stomach churned at the sight. That has to be the way forward, he said cautiously. If this is the heart of the house, maybe it leads out. Emily hesitated. Or it's another trap. It's waiting to claim us fully. Her voice trembled. Michael gripped her shoulders firmly. We don't have a choice. We can't stay here. They pushed through the doorway, stepping into a hallway that stretched endlessly. The walls were black, slick and pulsating, almost like skin. The floor vibrated subtly underfoot. From the shadows, faint whispers became coherent sentences, in a language that sounded eerily human yet alien. Leave. You cannot. Leave. Forever belongs. Figures began to emerge from the walls themselves, tall, thin, faceless. Their movements jerky and unnatural. One drifted close to Emily, brushing past her shoulder, leaving a cold, clammy sensation on her skin. She screamed, but the sound was absorbed by the darkness, leaving only the oppressive presence of the figures. Michael pushed her forward, trying to maintain a semblance of direction. Though the hallway bent and twisted in impossible ways, a sudden, low rumble shook the floor. The walls began to close in slowly, narrowing the passage. Michael and Emily sprinted, adrenaline surging, as the shadows behind them accelerated, moving closer with predatory precision. The whispers became a deafening chorus, overlapping voices screaming and chanting simultaneously. Emily's mind began to fracture under the pressure, each whisper amplifying her deepest fears. Being trapped, consumed, forgotten. They reached a small alcove, where a faint, flickering light revealed a staircase spiraling downward. Michael hesitated, listening to the low growl emanating from below. It's deep, he whispered. Emily's hands shook as she grasped his arm. We have no choice. We can't stay here. We go down or we're trapped forever. As they descended, the darkness thickened, swallowing sound, light, and even the sense of direction. Each step creaked under their weight, echoing like a warning. The air was cold, wet, and metallic, pressing against their skin like a suffocating shroud. Shapes moved just beyond their vision, faces, limbs, silhouettes never still, always watching. The staircase opened into a cavernous underground hall. The ceiling was impossibly high, stretching into darkness. Walls were lined with mirrors reflecting infinite corridors filled with the lost, screaming victims of the house. Some mirrors were shattered, releasing shadowy tendrils that writhed and hissed. The ground was uneven, slick with dark, congealed liquid that clung to their shoes. Emily gasped. This is where everyone ends up. She pointed toward a distant figure, pale and hollow-eyed, reaching toward them. Michael took her hand. We survive. Together. They ran through the hall, the mirrors and shadows pursuing, the air vibrating with the house's malevolent heartbeat. The whispers now became commands. Stay, stay, belong, forever. Each syllable struck their minds like a hammer, making every step feel heavier. At the far end, a massive doorway appeared, carved with grotesque figures writhing in silent agony. Beyond it, faint light shimmered, unlike any light they had seen inside the house. Michael and Emily exchanged a glance, knowing instinctively this was the final threshold. With fear clawing at their hearts, they ran toward it, the shadows surging behind them, the whispers reaching a fevered crescendo. As they passed through the doorway, the darkness seemed to peel away, the air lightening, and for the first time in what felt like eternity, Michael and Emily glimpsed a world that resembled reality again. But even as relief washed over them, the memory of the house's pulse, the whispers, and the faceless figures lingered, haunting their every step forward. The world beyond the doorway was not completely familiar, but it was closer to reality than the nightmare they had just escaped. Rain poured steadily outside, hammering the roof of a crumbling, overgrown courtyard. The air smelled like wet earth and rotting leaves, a stark contrast to the metallic stench and suffocating darkness of the house's interior. Michael and Emily stumbled forward, drenched and shivering, their clothes clinging uncomfortably to their skin. Every instinct screamed to stop, to rest, but the memory of the shadows and the whispers drove them onward. The courtyard stretched around them, bordered by the remnants of a stone wall, half collapsed, overtaken by ivy and moss. Broken statues of grotesque figures lined the path, some missing limbs, others with faces twisted into permanent screams. Lightning flashed, illuminating the statues for brief moments, and Emily swore she saw them shift slightly, like they were alive. She clutched Michael's arm, her nails digging into his skin. Are we really out?" she whispered, voice shaking. Michael glanced around cautiously. "I don't know, but I know the house is still inside us. We can't let our guard down." They moved cautiously toward what appeared to be the remains of an old gate. At the far end of the courtyard, the iron was rusted, twisted, but a faint light shimmered beyond it, faintly warm and golden compared to the gray, storm-lashed world around them. As they approached, the ground beneath their feet shuddered slightly, reminding them that the house's influence might still reach this far. Suddenly, a low, guttural sound rose from the shadows behind them. Michael spun around, but the courtyard appeared empty. Yet Emily felt a presence, a cold, clammy pressure along the back of her neck. "It's not over," she whispered. Michael nodded grimly. The wind howled, carrying with it faint whispers, echoes of the house's voices. "You cannot leave. Forever belongs." They reached the gate and pushed against it, the rusted iron groaning loudly. As it swung open, the golden light beyond illuminated a narrow path leading into a dense forest. The trees were tall and twisted, their branches clawing at the sky. The storm above seemed to part slightly over this path, as if guiding them. Michael and Emily exchanged a glance, and without speaking, stepped forward together. The path was narrow, muddy, and littered with broken branches. With each step, Emily felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her, her legs trembling. Michael's breath came in ragged gasps, but he kept moving, determined to reach the light. Behind them, faint movements in the courtyard suggested the shadows might be observing. Lingering just beyond reach, the forest thickened, and the path began to twist unnaturally, as if the trees themselves were rearranging to confuse them. Emily stumbled over a root and fell, scraping her hands and knees. Michael helped her up quickly. "We can't stop," he said. "Not yet. Keep going." After what felt like hours, they reached a small clearing. In the center, a faintly glowing stone stood, carved with strange symbols that pulsed softly. The light seemed warm, protective, a stark contrast to the cold terror they had endured. As they approached, Emily felt a strange calm settle over her, like a shield against the lingering darkness. Michael placed his hand on the stone, and a pulse of energy radiated outward. The forest seemed to sigh, the wind calming, shadows receding slightly. Emily touched the stone as well, and together they felt a strange connection, a tether to something solid and real. A lifeline after the endless nightmare of the house. But the house's whispers had not fully vanished. In the edges of their perception, they could still hear faint echoes, promises of return, threats, and malice. The memory of the twisting corridors, the faceless figures, and the pulsing walls would haunt them forever. They were free for now, but the house had left its mark on their minds. A reminder that fear, once fed, never fully disappears. Michael and Emily stepped away from the stone, holding hands. The light ahead of them grew brighter, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, they saw a horizon beyond the trees, a world that was theirs to reclaim. They walked toward it cautiously, hearts heavy but alive, knowing that the nightmare was over for now. The forest behind them remained silent, but a faint whisper lingered in the air, so soft it could almost be mistaken for the wind. "We remember. We wait." Michael squeezed Emily's hand. "We made it. Together." Emily nodded, though a shiver ran down her spine. Some part of her knew that the house would never forget them, and that the darkness they had escaped would always be lurking. Patient and waiting, they continued down the path, the golden light guiding them, leaving behind the twisted, pulsing heart of the house. Behind them, the courtyard and the corrupted mansion slowly disappeared into the mist, as if it had never existed. But the scars of what they had endured would remain forever etched into their minds, their memories, their very souls. And somewhere, deep within the shadows of that endless house, the whispers continued, waiting for the next unwary travelers to enter, feeding once again on the fear that never truly dies. Michael and Emily walked cautiously along the golden-lit path, their feet sinking slightly into the damp earth. The forest around them seemed calm now, almost surreal in its silence after the unrelenting chaos of the house. Every step they took felt heavier, not because of fatigue, but because the memory of the horrors behind them weighed on their minds like an invisible anchor. Shadows still lingered at the edges of perception, but the pulse of the house's darkness was fading just enough to allow them to breathe. Without screaming, Emily glanced back once, over her shoulder. The mist obscured the courtyard and the mansion, but she could swear she saw a faint silhouette in the distance, a figure, faceless, watching them from the tree line. Her heart thumped in her chest, a mix of fear and disbelief. "It's gone," she whispered, though the uncertainty in her voice betrayed her doubt. Michael shook his head. "Not gone, just waiting." The path opened gradually into a clearing, wider this time, with the first hint of dawn breaking through the thick canopy of trees. Golden light spilled across the ground, illuminating the forest floor with a warmth they hadn't felt since arriving at the farmhouse. Birds began to stir, their songs tentative at first, then growing stronger, as if reclaiming the world from the oppressive darkness. Michael and Emily exchanged a glance, a shared understanding passing between them. They had survived. Somehow, against impossible odds, they had survived. As they moved forward, Emily tripped over a root, falling onto the damp soil. She groaned, but quickly pushed herself upright. Michael offered his hand, and she took it, the warmth of his grip grounding her in the reality that had once felt so distant. "We need to keep moving," Michael said. "We can't stop yet. Not until we're sure we're safe." They reached the edge of the forest, where the trees thinned and the first hints of a small town became visible in the distance. The buildings looked ordinary, mundane in comparison to the twisted nightmare they had just escaped. But it was a relief unlike anything they had known. The town streets were empty at this early hour, the mist curling lazily between the lamp posts. For the first time, Michael and Emily felt the possibility of safety. But the memories of the house were far from gone. Every step toward the town was accompanied by flashes of corridors, pulsing walls, and the faces of faceless figures. Emily shivered, and Michael squeezed her hand reassuringly. "It's okay," he said softly. "We made it out. That's what matters. Nothing can touch us out here, not unless we let it." The sunlight grew stronger as they entered the town proper. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of wet earth and blooming flowers instead of decay and metallic rot. They passed familiar shops and houses, noticing mundane details for the first time. A cat crossing the street, a newspaper fluttering in the wind, the distant sound of someone hammering on a roof. The world felt alive again, vibrant and untreating. As they walked, Emily glanced down at her hands, still trembling. Do you think it's really over?" she asked. Michael considered for a moment. "I don't know if it ever truly ends," he admitted. "The house, whatever it is, it remembers, it waits. But we're here now, we're alive, and that has to count for something." The path eventually led to a main road, and they could see the first signs of life: cars moving, people walking, dogs barking. The normalcy was almost jarring after everything they had endured. Michael and Emily slowed their pace, soaking in the reality that they had escaped the endless corridors, the shadows, and the heart of the house. The whispers, the twisted reflections, the pulse of the walls. They were gone, at least for now. Emily stopped and took a deep breath, the weight of everything finally pressing down fully. "We're okay, really okay?" she asked, voice cracking. Michael nodded. "We survived. That's all we can promise." They continued walking toward the town, the golden morning light growing warmer with each step. Behind them, the forest and the ruins of the mansion disappeared into the mist. The house, the horrors, the faceless figures, they remained behind, patient and eternal. But they were safe, at least for this moment. And though the memory of what they had faced would haunt them forever, the knowledge that they had faced it together and had survived was a small but enduring light in the shadow of all they had endured. As the town drew closer, Emily looked up at Michael. We made it." "Yes," Michael replied, his voice steady despite the exhaustion and lingering fear. "We made it. Together." The world outside the house continued on, oblivious to the horrors it had sheltered in the shadows. But Michael and Emily knew something had changed, not just the house, but themselves. The darkness would never fully leave them, but neither would the strength that had carried them out. And so, step by step, they walked into the light, leaving behind the nightmare, but carrying its lessons and its scars, knowing that survival is not about escaping fear, but enduring it and living despite it.